Okay, good afternoon everyone and welcome to another transfer special of On The Whistle. I thought we might have a quiet day getting ready for the start of the new Premier League season, but no, Sunderland is still going and summer signing number 12 doesn't look too far off now. A really positive week this for Sunderland. New contract for Luke 19, new contract for Trey Hume, new contract for Trey Ogunsidi, and that's definitely not one that should go under the radar. A really talented young striker who's had some of the biggest clubs in the country monitoring his progress over the last year. He'd entered the last year of his current deal, so that's a really big one for Sunderland in terms of the long term to get under their belt. So yeah, let's have a chat about Nordi Mukiele from PSG, who looks like he could be on his way to becoming Sunderland's 12th summer signing. Now at this point, really important to stress, time of recording 2:30 on Friday afternoon, and Mukiele hasn't been confirmed. I'm still waiting for the details in terms of whether this is a loan, whether it's a permanent, whether it's a loan with an option to buy. But clearly there's advanced talks going on between Sunderland and PSG, so I think we're in a position where we can chat a little bit, as we have done this summer, about this player and what he might bring to the Sunderland squad. So, who is Mukiele? He's a really experienced, versatile defender, and if there's one thing that I could stress about Mukiele, it's his versatility, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But he's had a really strong career so far, sort of made his name at Montpellier in the French top division, where he then moved to Bundesliga club RB Leipzig. He was a regular there for a number of years, and that was what then earned him his move to PSG. Now, since then, he's played semi-regularly, but he hasn't been a permanent fixture in the team. And if we're talking about how someone have been able to recruit a player of this level of experience at the top level and Champions League experience as well, that would probably be the reason why, because it's been a few years since he's really played as a regular week in, week out, and that's probably why he's sort of available to Sunderland. Last season, after his first 2 years at PSG, he actually went on loan to Bayer Leverkusen, where he of course played with Granit Xhaka. He did play quite a bit there. He played 24 appearances in all competitions, so he was a semi-regular, as I said, in the squad, but he didn't sort of nail down a position week in, week out. Now, I personally am not too concerned about that, because we're talking about some of the biggest clubs in the world here that he's been playing for recently, and the fact that he's been a really strong squad player in those squads is something that I think, coming into Sunderland, adjusting to promotion to the Premier League, I think is pretty exciting. This is another really impressive transfer. But if there's one kind of thing, I think it's worth just getting the slight negative out the way early, it's that he's not someone who's played loads and loads of minutes compared to a lot of other defenders over the last few years. However, there is a huge amount to be positive and excited about here, and I'll get into that now. As I said before, if there's one word that springs to mind if we're talking about Mukiele more generally, it's versatility. So, as you might remember from when we did the Granit Xhaka video earlier this summer, Leverkusen predominantly play with a back three, and Mukiele has played either as a right wing back or a right-sided centre-back, so the right of the back three. He's switched between the two with great ease and played a lot of minutes in both positions. This wasn't a fluke either, this is something that he did. So when he was at Leipzig for those years, which I mentioned before, they at the time were also playing with a back three, and again, he got loads of minutes as a right wing back and got loads of minutes on the right of the back three. To me, that is a massive tick, because that tells you that he's an all-rounder. He's good enough going forward to play at wing-back, and he's good enough defensively to play at right-sided centre-back. So I think that is a real tick for me, and something that makes me excited about dropping him into this group of defenders, that he can play a lot of different roles, he's got a lot of different disciplines, and he can play in a few positions. We'll also add that when he was at PSG, not only did he play as a more traditional right-back on the right of a back four, bit of a tongue twister there, he did actually also play at left-back. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's something he'll do regularly for Sunderland. I think it's very unlikely, given they've got Reynaldo, Arthur Masuaku, Dennis Serkin coming back to fitness. But it's just to give you a flavour. This is a guy who, for a long period of time, has been dropped into different roles and succeeded there without any problems at a high level. So when I'm looking at what he's going to bring to Sunderland, the first thing for me is that he's going to bring quality to a lot of different positions. And that could be absolutely huge over the course of the full season, especially as we've talked about with some players potentially going to the African Cup of Nations. So I'm going to look at some of his stats in a minute while I have a sip of coffee. It's been a long day, so apologies to those. I know it's annoying when I drink my coffee, but no coffee, no videos, I'm afraid. So looking into his stats at Leverkusen last season. Now, this is a little bit tricky for the reason that I've outlined before, because do you compare him to centre-backs or do you compare him to full-backs? Both are a little bit unfair, because he might not compare attacking wise as favourably to a lot of other full-backs, because obviously he's played minutes at centre-back, and the same also applies. However, I think there's a few things that we can kind of tease out from his performances last season that give us a bit of a flavour about what his key strengths are. So if we look at Wyscout first and foremost for their Bundesliga data for last season, and we look at fullbacks in the Bundesliga, we can see that Mukiele was 4th for dribbles, he was 12th for progressive runs, he was 4th for deep completed crosses, and he was 3rd for offensive duels per 90 minutes. So this tells us that his attacking numbers whenever he played were really, really good. He was involved in a lot of attacking pieces of play, so really comfortable in the final third, really comfortable getting to the byline. He's got the pace and the quality to do that, putting crosses in, taking on his marker. Now, I would expect his attacking numbers to be pretty good when he's playing minutes at wing-back for a Leverkusen team who would dominate in most games. But even so, I think that tells you that he's got a real flavour for getting forward and he's got the aptitude to do it. However, there were also some really strong defensive numbers, which kind of goes back to what I was talking about before, about this picture emerging of a bit of an all-round player. So he was in the top 5% for interceptions, the top 22% for clearances, and the top 4% for aerials won per 90 minutes. Now that's also, again, compared to fullbacks in the Bundesliga, not centre-backs. But that goes to show you, I think, that we are looking at a really solid player. And what was interesting was that when what I thought was it would be interesting to go back and look at the last time, his last season at Leipzig, where of course he really made his reputation as one of Europe's sort of top young defenders. Really, really similar picture. So he was scoring really highly against fullbacks in the Bundesliga at that time for combined goals and combined assists. So I think that's something that we can take a lot of encouragement for. Similarly, strong numbers in terms of his aerial duels and how much he was winning, which is definitely a positive. And some really strong interception and clearances numbers as well. So when I've been watching him, watching his clips on Wyscout, definitely get the impression of a player who has the quality in the final third, who likes to get to the byline, who likes to take players on, but he has pace and he has some strong defensive attributes as well. So as I said before, if I was to describe him from my research, I would describe him as a pretty solid all-rounder, very good at pretty much every facet of the game. Wouldn't say he's necessarily an obviously super attacking fullback, wouldn't say he's necessarily one who's super strong in the defensive. I think he's just someone who does everything pretty well, and I think that's really exciting. So I think that there's pretty much not far off complete Sunderland's defensive sort of group for the season, if, and it still is if, as I said at Friday afternoon at time of recording, defensive options. I had heard sort of along the way that Sunderland might sign another left-sided centre-back off the back of the Alderete one, so time will tell on that one. What that would of course allow Sunderland then potentially to do is to let Jensen Seal go out on loan, which might be the best thing for his development on the whole. Possibly Nektar Triantis departing as well. So there's a possibility, I think, another centre-back comes in on top of this deal if it does. But I think one area that we were looking at saying maybe there's a little bit of lack of competition and depth behind Trey Hume. This obviously solves that. So I really do feel like we're seeing Sunderland get towards the end of their income and business here if this deal goes through. Possibly another centre-back, and we know that they definitely want to try and sign another versatile winger. Beyond that, I don't think there's too much more left to do. So overall, super positive. This is a player who we talked a little bit about how that first wave of the window was adding talent with a lot of resale value and players who could grow in time. And the second layer of this window was adding experienced players who know the level and can thrive at it. Well, Mukiele is absolutely that. Someone with vast top-level experience and, as I say, a lot of impressive attributes. Has a little bit of work to do in terms of maybe getting back to the absolute best level that he's shown in the past, but I don't think we should be too concerned about that. We're talking about a player who played regularly for PSG, and I don't think we should be too concerned that he maybe wasn't an absolute regular in the team. One last thing I would say as well is Trey Hume's data, I know it was at a lower level in the Championship, but was exceptional. So I don't think we should assume Mukiele is coming straight in to take his spot. I think Trey Hume has a massive future here with that long-term contract. Mukiele maybe a bit more of a dribbler than Hume. Hume maybe a bit more of a tackler than Mukiele, but I definitely don't think we should see this as a player who's going to come straight into the starting 11. I think he'll compete with Hume, and Hume's numbers are so good in pretty much every facet of his game for a right back, albeit at Championship level, that I think he's got a massive chance still of making this spot his own. And of course, as we know, Mukiele can compete at centre back as well for places as well. So I just think this is another really exciting bit of business. And as ever, thanks for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it.